Welcome to the Inner Adventure, a series where we talk about ecology, nature, and psychology. I'm Dr. Jennings, a psychologist in private practice, and my co-host is Lutz, Otto, a professional wilderness walking guide and business consultant. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the mindset or the preparation that one should consider as you embark on your adventure, as you embark on the journey into nature. And as I was thinking about this topic, I obviously thought of my own work and working with top athletes and elite sportsmen that are preparing for top events. And I was wondering whether there was some sort of similarity, which is the topic of our conversation today, which I was going to now raise with Lutz. And fundamentally, when a top athlete goes through this preparation phase, as he approaches or she approaches this time when they're going to compete, there's a process that they go through. There's preparation on strategy, where the team speaks to each other, the coaches are discussing certain things. There's discussions about the strengths and the weaknesses of the team. There's discussions about the opposition, about how we should best tackle the opposition. As one actually gets closer and closer to this competitive moment, there's also aspects like being able to relax and the whole process of building up your energy for that moment where this competitive contest unfolds. So given this, I was thinking or wondering whether a similar process shouldn't occur for those who decide to embark on an adventure in nature. Before I do that, as per my love for photography, I thought I'd like to share two photographs with you. So let me just get there. So I took this photograph probably 3 or 4 years ago. And what really struck me was the aloneness of this adventurer as he climbed up this mountain all on his own. The other aspect was the footprints that he was leaving as he was making his way up the hill. And I got to thinking about this whole aspect of preparation and the clothes he had to wear, and whether he considered the snowshoes that he was actually wearing, and where he was going to. What was his journey about? And I also realized that as he was on this journey, he himself was going through a process of the challenge of what he had actually decided to embark on. I think linked to that, it wasn't in the same year. In fact, this photograph was taken 2 years ago, was this entry into this vast natural space. And the journey of these two walkers, or let's say walkers or adventurers into nature, the smallness of them compared to the size and the expanse of where they were journeying and the conditions that they were having to deal with. And these two photographs really activated my thinking as the starting point of our discussion today. So, Lutz, if I can just now get out of screen share, and am I out of screen share yet? No, not yet. It's just to get a sense from you, seeing those two photographs, and maybe just to share a little bit from your perspective about this preparation? Is there a need for preparation for those now embarking on an adventure into the wilderness?
I loved seeing those two photographs, Ken, because they reminded me of another place that I love. We're talking a lot in the context of the bush, but I love big snowy vistas. And as I'm thinking of nature, you sitting in summer in the northern hemisphere, and I'm sitting in winter in the southern hemisphere. This morning I ran, and it was -1 degrees. And you are sitting in +degrees. So it just shows you how nature is different in different places. But yeah, to your question, firstly, and that's that the activity, that particular venture sets up my point quite nicely. Different adventures need different preparation. I think there's no such thing as standard equipment preparation. There's no such thing as standard fitness preparation for a particular adventure in wilderness. In the context of a winter activity, your clothing is very different. The types of shoes you're using, the snowshoes that guy was using, perhaps you use a set of ski mountaineering skis to get up a particular slope. When you're coming to Africa, unless you're going to the high mountains, you're less likely to need that equipment. So equipment is one aspect. And within the context of safari, it's important that I differentiate levels. So again, I spoke of in a previous series of almost a pyramid of safaris or processes of safaris. So self-drive, an entry-level lodge experience, which is often it's quite a churned experience, a mid-level lodge experience, high-end lodge experience. And then in the pure walking space, you have what we call trails camps, shifting from trails camps to a backpacking safari and ultimately a primitive safari where we're sleeping without tents under the stars. So spirited adventures in consulting, and this is the context which I'm going to talk in, is a walking and adventure safari operator. Our work is predominantly in the category I spoke of, with trails camps, backpacking safari. So the equipment that you choose needs to be appropriate. We just don't have enough time to go into that. There's a great blog on my website that speaks to that. In terms of fitness, the longer your level of walking that you're going to be undertaking, and the more strenuous your fitness needs to be appropriately adjusted. You're going to have just so much better experience if you arrive in a reasonably good shape. You don't have to be marathon fit, but fitness is just it's a huge benefit. You sweat less, you enjoy the process more. The other aspect of fitness, and this is the one that I'd like to touch on, and this is where nature, ecology, and psychology meet, is the mindset you arrive with. So the mental mindset, the psychological mindset. I think, as a starting point, it's good to have a base set of expectations, and that is the type of experience you're going to have, the type of activity that you're going to be walking in Africa, that you're going to be walking with a guide. But don't place expectation on nature. Come with an open mind. Come with a mind open to possibility. Possibility, you could have a busy time with lots of big five, or you could have a busy time with the baby five. I think come open to learn. So learning meaning that you're open to a mental learning, hearing, smelling, sensing, spiritual learning. Come excited, but with little expectation on what nature will produce. That's when nature produces best. When we don't put expectation on her, she will then perform at her very best. It's often a challenge to do that for many people. Yeah, go on.
Can I come in here, Lutz? Because you're saying something so important for me. Is this mindset that one has. I read a very interesting photographic article, and the person was talking about the intention to notice.
Yeah.
So as you walk into the natural environment, that if the mindset links to the intention to notice what is unfolding is so important. And then secondly, I think what you were talking about is a sense of awe or a sense of excitement.
Yeah.
That these two elements, this article was saying, is fundamental to taking photographs that are connective and show love and show beauty and excitement and awe of whatever we are witnessing. So I'm sorry I just came in there because I thought it's so important that you were talking about the type of mindset that one needs.
Yeah, Ken, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And in fact, I would add only one additional point to that, and that is bring the energy to be involved. So have the sense of awe, have the sense of a beginner's mind, an exploratory mind, and then have the energy to be in awe, to get up early and be there, having that early cup of coffee, speak to your safari guide, get out there and just enjoy it, because we spend, or the person coming on safari spends anywhere between 18 months and 6 months dreaming about this experience, and it happens very quickly. You want to bring in as much energy as possible just to enjoy it. I think on that point, and I'm not sure where the conversation is going to lead, but in terms of walking safaris, I always recommend at least 3 nights, at least 4 or 5 or better. And there's a very specific reason for that, because this process that you've spoken to, of being able to see deeper, of being able to learn more, it takes time. So often on the first day, your arrival, you're tired, you're excited, then that night you're sleeping in an unfenced camp, you're hearing crazy noises that you haven't heard before, a lion might roar, there might just be silence, but real silence.
Yes.
Real silence for someone coming from the city is quite unnerving.
I was going to say that, you know, silence can be quite eerie and quite disconcerting. You know, yeah. If you come from a place of noise and, you know, think of yourself living in a city and you've got cars and hooters and people shouting and screaming, and the next day you're in the middle of the wilderness, which in its vastness seems like nothingness, because there's nothing in inverted commas happening and there's silence.
Yeah.
I mean that's an experience.
Yeah, absolutely, Ken. So that second day, now you haven't slept properly, you're a little bit jet lagged, and there's, you know, there might be lots going on, there might be nothing going on, but the mind is overstimulated at that point. It's just, and on the second night, you get a good night's sleep, because now you're exhausted and you just sleep and you kind of accepted that it's either silent or noisy. And on the third morning, that's when the magic happens, because now you've settled into this, you understand the process, you understand what's going on, and the magic just starts happening. And it's just again and again that I hear that if the client decided to leave on that day or even the next day, that they are disappointed, that just as the magic was happening, they now need to leave.
What do you mean by magic? Because that's interesting for me, when you said the magic starts happening. So let me just unpack that for myself.
Yeah.
It seems that your first day, maybe we live life with a little bit of a lag. So what I mean by that is the first day, you're still lagging a little bit into the old life, and you have to let go of, you know, the distractions and the worries. If you're an executive, you might have left some decision that still has to be made, or you're going to make, and you leave that life in inverted commas, and you come into nature, into a wilderness where there's just this moment in time. And so you take time to get almost embedded in nature. Now, what did you mean then, say day 3 or the morning of your day 3 that the magic happens?
So I think, Ken, that's right. There's the first day never starts at 4 in the morning. You know, there's a period of travel, there's a period of arrival. You get there roughly midday, anywhere between 10 and 1 o'clock, depending on how the transfer or your drive was. And that's a little bit rushed. You do what you've got to do, and then that afternoon your activities start. And if it's a backpacking safari, it would have started a little bit earlier. But roughly that first day is quite. It's exactly that. It's a line between one type of activity or an experience and another. Through that night, you're uncomfortable, as I mentioned. The next day, you start seeing things, hearing things, smelling things. You have a good night's rest, hopefully. And the next morning, there's a connectedness that has happened. So the connectedness is now to earth, back to, or groundedness, a lot of people talk of. There's a relaxation about the activity. There's a, I'm sure you have the same in top sports. I certainly know in business it's a case where if you're too worked up and you're too tense and you're still tying onto that energy, you miss half of what's going on. Your focus is not there. Your attention is tunnel vision at certain levels, but you miss everything else. Yes. So on day 3, suddenly you've calmed down and you're enjoying what's going on, and you've worked out everything's not going to eat you, and that we coexist in this beautiful space, and with the relaxation comes an increased curiosity, comes an increased visual connection, sensory connection. All these things just start coming into focus. I've seen how clients, especially interestingly, September is quite an interesting safari period because we in the southern hemisphere are starting to, we've moved into officially spring. And at certain points around that period, September, October, you can almost see across days how certain species that come back into leaf transform. So you've got no leaves, little bit of leaf, boom, leaves. And the client observes that. And they go, I just didn't see that on the first day. And I think it's this thing of relaxation. And if the client is engaged in the experience, these things start naturally happening.
You make such an interesting point about this relaxed state, because that really resonates with me as well. In my work with top athletes, and they play in international competition, and you've got crowds and you've got television and media, is that relaxed state is the state where performance unfolds, where creativity unfolds, because the energy system just softens. And you're from a physical perspective, you're not tight and sort of stiff. And then from a sensory perspective, everything opens up, and you almost go from a focused vision, which you can still have, but more also to a peripheral vision. And I've had a couple of conversations with top athletes who've broken world records and that. And they talk about in this place where, and maybe it's linked to the magic, where you find yourself in flow and in the zone. And time stands still. It's like it doesn't exist. And there's a connection, a very deep connection between yourself and what you're doing, and yourself and nature, or yourself and even the opponent or the team you're playing in. So you have the sense of that you just are so connected to what's unfolding. So I just thought I'd like to mention that.
Yeah, Ken, I think there is a little bit of flow or the zone at that point. It probably taps out a little bit and comes back in, but that relaxed state is definitely, it's critical to really just enjoying the experience.
Can you now just take this to the next level? Is obviously, when, in my experience, when somebody goes through a process, and it doesn't matter what the process is, because I always say to young athletes as well, you have to go through the process and hard work, challenges, uncomfortablenesses, and so on. Do you see in these 3 days, 4 days, like a process of transformation, called it, or change? Let's just use that word, change, in your clients as they've gone through, those 4 days or 5 days with you.
Absolutely, Ken. Again, I need to come back to the point of the context of the type of safaris that we run. So a walking safari, adventure safari, there's a little bit more of an energetic commitment to the process. So once we've worked through those 3 days, that point that we spoke to, there's definitely a change that starts happening. I worked not too long ago with the lady that was in a backpacking safari that was a change consultant. She owned her own consultancy that she was running major change programs through. And she could see how, through that typical change curve, how she was moving in that safari. So initially arriving quite, all the stages, anger, denial, right through to acceptance, and actually then reaching that point of creativity and seeing things different. So not every person goes through a steep curve like that. Without a doubt, I see a couple of the following points. Once the person starts relaxing and we're in the right setting, ideally where there's not too much connection with other people at all, if ideally zero connection with other people. So a very personalized environment, a very exclusive wilderness environment. Introspection starts happening. I can almost guarantee that if the person has come with the right frame of mind and the right mindset, that some level of introspection will start happening. There's going to be a perspective shift. That perspective shift, I'm not sure how long it lasts. Sometimes I'm fortunate to hear from clients after a period. Some clients keep coming back, but there's definitely a perspective shift. There's a change in the way that people think. Change in clocks, internal clocks are getting up earlier. Accepting this is gratefulness. On the wilderness safaris in particular, where we digging for water, or we're collecting water from river sources and having to filter that water, where there's a process of, for example, we're building fire by friction before we sit night duty. There's a much deeper gratefulness for what we have back in modern day society. There's a connection that starts happening amongst the group. On the wilderness safaris, a trust starts building because we realize that, we're all integral in this process. The guide that says he can see everything or is on top of it all the time hasn't guided long enough. I start every single trail and I say, we're a team. And my clients are as much as part of that team as I might be leading that team. So this connection starts happening. Some of the safaris that we do, where we sleep out, so we sleep under the stars without tents, and we sit guard duty through the night. Those, more so than any of the other experiences, create a deep trust amongst that group, because you realize that while I'm fast asleep, this person is keeping an eye on things to make sure that a predator doesn't come into that environment. There's things that we spoke of in the first set of slides. We start developing skills, emotional skills, leadership skills. There's a level of inspiration that starts unfolding, and this happens deeper into the process. So again, it comes back to this. You don't want to cheat yourself of this time. You want to give yourself a few more days rather than a few less days. It's part of an investment into self. On the point of backpacking and primitive trail safaris, particularly the ones that we try and cover a little bit of distance and are exposed to really different environments, I think we start tapping into other things. Resilience, grit, become very real in the discussion.
Yes.
And the principle of accepting where I am now and how I'm responding or behaving where I am now versus in my day-to-day life. And that's quite an interesting point. I recently wrote an article, I think I called it Resilience, Resolve, and Grit. So resilience, resolve, and reality. And it really spun out of this last point that I made. But that's, those trails aren't for everybody. It's quite a niche space. But to me, that is a premier experience.
It doesn't sound like a niche space to me. It sounds like hardcore. Hardcore. But I want to backtrack just a little bit. When you spoke about this introspection,
yeah,
that gets activated. I think it like nature throws you back at yourself. I just think we encounter ourselves often more than we encounter nature. When we are in nature, we actually encounter ourselves and we are encountering nature. And a lot of my work, and even when I'm in nature, is we start questioning. We start questioning our lives. We start questioning even deep things like, for example, whether we want to change career direction, for example, completely. So we're not even talking about a change in the same type of career, but we're talking about from, let's say, being a professional engineer to becoming a screenwriter or a writer or a novelist because of the love that might have, that you might have in it. And so nature, as it throws you back into yourself, you start questioning, and you start questioning the meaningfulness of your relationships. You might even question the type of relationship that you might be in that needs to change. You question your own self and changes that need to unfold. So I think that is a very deep, let's say, experiential process in nature, which I think then links to this transformational nature, this transformational process in nature that you cannot not be touched by nature. When you're in the environment you're talking, 4 days or 5 days in wilderness, you're right connected to it by virtue of the type of activity. So you're not sitting in a car, taking a 2-hour drive, then getting back to your bungalow, having your, cup of tea and scones, and then putting your legs up and having a sleep. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because even being in nature in that conditional way is fine. But your process that you're outlining, when you have to walk to see, and as you're walking, you are seeing, and you're close, and you lower in terms of your vision. In other words, you're not sitting on a double-decker, one of these double-decker type of viewing vehicles. So the eye level immediately changes the experience.
Ken, so there's two things that I want to draw on. The first is the point of walking takes you from a place of observation, which is what you just spoke of, to becoming immersed in the ecosystem. It's true immersion. You now are on eye level. You're sweating. You can smell everything. It's immersion. Your point around introspection is very interesting, and something that I've become increasingly more fascinated about. I see this regularly, and I speak of the spirit of wilderness. That's something, and I'm not sure what it is. It could be the spirits of time. It could be the collective energy of that space. There are so many possibilities. But there is no doubt in my mind that if you spend enough time in wilderness and you open yourself, you let yourself be connected to this environment, that it does exactly what you just said. And the introspection might not result in change. It could be that, wow, I'm actually really happy with my life, where I am, and I'm grateful for that. It might be that realization, and that realization in itself is quite powerful in a society where we're after instant gratification, the next best thing, whereas actually we might have everything, and it might just be that realization that happens at that point. The spirits of wilderness. I'm not sure if you've got anything to add.
Well, I mean, you've now added another point, that if one's life is going, call it well, and we content and we happy and we're in nature, this element of appreciation and gratitude, I think, is so important. And I also notice this with top athletes who have come to almost feel and believe that things are owing to them, and when they do get things, they're not grateful for it. There's no appreciation to it. And because of that, there's no sense of connection with themselves. All they're thinking of is the end performance and the gains they can get. So when you spoke about appreciation and gratitude, I mean, there's a lot in the school of psychology where psychologists often ask a client to open up an appreciation journal.
Yes.
And in this journal every day, the client is asked just to write a couple of things, or maybe even just one thing that they are appreciative of and grateful of, or what they've noticed that they are appreciative of. And there's research that has shown the transformation that process actually unfolds in a person. Just, there's also two very simple words that I don't think we use enough. Well, the words I'm thinking of is thank you. Thank you. Okay. I mean, the other three important words is I love you.
Yeah.
So love and appreciation. But just saying thank you. And I think, I notice how even if we do something small for somebody, sometimes people don't even say thank you, So just connecting to appreciation. And if nature activates us in that place of appreciation, and we feel our part, we feel our connection, I mean, it's transformative. It's definitely transformative. Do you want to add a little bit more, because we're coming to the end of our conversation again, Lutz. When I say end, I've got two more photographs that I want to show, and also maybe I've got a slide. But if we don't have time, we can.
Let's jump onto, because I know how this goes and I know how we go. I'd love to see the two photographs.
So I want to have a look at this. So let's just. So that is the last photo. So this is a little church close by to where I live, and this is late March. When I say late March, it's I think the 30th of March, 2 years ago, and it's just starting with spring in the northern hemisphere. Yeah. So 30th of March, and this is the 31st of March.
Yeah.
30th of March. '31st of March. And this idea about transformation is linked to this concept of what I call the quantum leap, where there is such a shift in one's perspective that you can't think any differently, or can't think in the same way as what you used to. you find yourself in a totally different place. And that shift can happen very quickly. That transformation can happen very quickly. And when I say quickly, I mean 3 days in terms of a life, or 4 days in terms of a life in nature, going through, let's say, one of your experiences, is almost like a minute in terms of the big picture of life. And the transformation that can occur from these experiences can be that to that, or going the other way, from that to that. And I think this is one of the real, let's say, powerful phenomenon of nature. And the other thing I want to add to this is that fundamentally we don't have to do anything different, or we don't have to do anything, because we don't have to try and, I don't know, study about nature or go and do this. All we have to do is we have to be in nature. And being in nature is on a higher level of doing in nature. So when you mentioned, when you open up your senses, when you open up your heart, when you drop your defenses, when you enter into this relaxed place, when you have this intention to notice, and you are in awe and appreciative of the space that surrounds you, a transformation is almost guaranteed. And it can't be mechanized. You know, it can't be manipulated.
I would like to just add one point to that, and really one point, realizing we're short on time. I think from personal experience, and I'm sure from your experience too, is once that transformation occurs, the switch has happened, and it is just so, it's not possible to go back. That transformation, that mental switch is very real.
Well, Lutz, you know, this is we're coming to the end of our third conversation, and I remember in our last two, we always seem to end off to say, well, we could be talking more and more and more, you know, so we need to obviously end off, and there is so much more to talk about, which we will cover in our next conversations as they unfold over time. I also want to share a little bit of a simple model that clients can take with them as they walk into nature. It's based on ecosystemic psychology principles, which I use for top teams. So we'll do that. We'll cover that in one of our next series. It could be the next one or after that. But I've been really so engaged in our conversation again today as ecology, as nature, and as psychology talk to each other and come together in a holistic, meaningful sense. So Lutz, again, thank you for being my co-host. And in closing, do you want to say anything?
Ken, I think you've summed it up beautifully. Thank you. Thank you for watching.
Okay, and thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again in our next inner adventure as we journey into the psychology and ecology and nature of our experiences. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up or a like after watching.